It all started in a volcano.
A microbe with origins in Yellowstone is fermented into a brand new source of protein, one that's nutritionally complete and green to produce with the versatility to be made into delicious foods you know and love.
This is vegan?
Yeah.
Wow, that's bomb. This is like cheese. It's very sharp and it's amazing. There's no meat in this.
No meat.
I'm really surprised by that. It tastes like a regular sausage patty.
I'm not vegan, but these are really good.
This actually tastes like a meat.
I like normal breakfast sausage, and I somehow like this even more.
As a vegetarian who loves meat and has been trying to find good meat alternatives, I take this.
In today's video, we're going to look at a super cool company that's making meat and other products using precision fermentation. And they've actually found a new complete protein that doesn't exist anywhere else in our food system.
On a bigger, food chain-wide scale, Phi is a source of net new protein.
They found this in Yellowstone National Park. And so what they're doing is they're taking this protein, which is a type of fungi, creating a lot of it, and then using that to make cream cheeses and meats and a bunch of other food products.
And the possibilities are endless, even though the mainstream doesn't see it. We can see infinite numbers of proteins. This is not an exaggeration. We actually did the numbers. There are millions of proteins in nature, but we get most of our proteins from just 12 plants and 5 animals, which makes exactly no sense.
So in the first part of the video, I look through the science about how they're doing this, and then I do my own taste test. I got a couple sausage patties, in this case, from different companies, so I'm just doing a comparison. And this is all about Nature's Fynd, the company. Let's get into the video to see what they're all about.
There are plenty of alternative proteins out there, but while they're more efficient than meat, they still require a lot of land and water, and they're difficult to make into things that look and feel like meat. So what we need is something that comes from nature so it's easy to grow and can be made close enough to consumers that it doesn't have to be hauled all over. But what we want is something that tastes good, is good for us, and can be made into all sorts of things. And that's not nearly as out of reach as it sounds. In fact, it's already here. It's the nutritional fungi protein called Phi. The secret to this protein isn't some mad science experiment, it's a microbe with origins in the hot springs of Yellowstone National Park. This is Fusarium strain flavolapis, an organism adapted to live in hot springs that have an acidity comparable to vinegar. It lives on plant matter that falls into the spring, and it grows as a fibrous structure called mycelium. And it's a member of the kingdom fungi. Scientists used to believe that fungi were a type of plant, but even though mushrooms are still stocked in the produce section, we now know that fungi fall into their own kingdom and are more closely related to animals than to flowers and trees. These organisms are incredibly diverse, capable of a huge variety of lifestyles, largely hidden from us. Fungi are everywhere, drifting invisibly through the air and hidden in the ground beneath your feet. And they are the best builders you've never seen. They're constantly constructing mycelium beneath the surface of the soil, some miles across and thousands of years old. Mycelia don't just help fungi thrive, though. They enrich the soil, and some form symbiotic relationships with plants to help them grow. But Fusarium strain flavolapis is special among mycelium builders, even its close cousins. It was found as part of a NASA-backed research project in Yellowstone National Park, where a group of scientists were studying extremophiles, forms of life adapted to harsh conditions. They were hoping to see what kinds of life could thrive in extreme alien environments beyond Earth, using extreme environments here on Earth as examples. But then they discovered F strain flavolapis, which has origins in the hot springs of the park. And scientists being, what scientists are, sooner or later, someone decided to lick it. Not literally right there and then, but you know what I mean. And that is how Nature's Fynd was born, to harness the potential of F strain flavolapis to transform food. Because fungi can be food. In fact, we've been using and eating them for millennia. You are no doubt familiar with mushrooms, your portobellos, your shiitakes, but that's definitely not the only option. Like yeast is a type of fungi, and we use it to transform bread and beer into their final delicious forms. Even the veins in blue cheese are thanks to fungi. Fungi can add flavor too. Nutritional yeast adds a pop of umami to foods, plus vegan protein. But while many fungi are valuable for their ability to transform or enhance foods, F strain flavolapis is more of a main character. It takes on a starring role. It ferments its food and grows to become a nutritional fungi protein that Nature's Fynd named Phi. And while we've made food using fermentation for ages, this superstar also needed some modern methodology to be its best self. Nature's Fynd scientists had to come up with a breakthrough fermentation method to make this work, but somehow it's still surprisingly simple. All it takes is the right environment and a source of food for the microbe. In a straightforward, energy-efficient technique called liquid-air interface fermentation, the microbe grows in trays with simple sugars, a little bit of nitrogen, and the warm, acidic water it loves. Because most other organisms are, reasonable and refuse to tolerate these acidic conditions, contamination isn't much of a concern. And that means no antibiotics or pesticides are needed to keep any invaders in check. The Nature's Fynd team also spent years learning how to grow the microbe without any hormones or genetic modifications. And there was no need to go back to Yellowstone either. Like a sourdough starter, the initial cultures were enough to grow all the phi we'll ever need. The fungi eat simple starches and sugars made by plants, and then they ferment these ingredients into an ample supply of protein. That means phi can be grown in lots of places, like cities or remote areas or regions where the weather isn't ideal for other crops. Which is neat, because it means it can be grown where it's going to be eaten. That keeps its carbon footprint low on its way to your local grocery store or restaurant. Since it grows into that dense fibrous mycelium, phi naturally feels like meat. But it's also really versatile in terms of texture and taste. It can be turned into everything from a powder to a liquid, and from there into just about anything you can imagine. So this microbe's biology makes it super convenient for us to grow and harvest, but also phi is like good for you. For one, it's a source of complete protein. Protein is one of the fundamental materials that make up our bodies. And to create proteins, our cells piece together a set of 20 different building blocks called amino acids. But our cells can only make 11 of those from scratch. We have to get the other 9 in our diets. Most kinds of animal protein will give us the right balance of amino acids so that we get all 9 we need. We call them sources of complete protein. And that's why vegetarians and vegans who don't eat animal protein need a varied source of plant proteins. You have to mix and match to get enough of the right amino acids. But phi is a vegan source of complete protein. In other words, it happens to come with a balanced ratio. Also, on a bigger, food chain-wide scale, phi is a source of net new protein. See, new sources of protein don't make it into the world as often as you might think. Many alternatives like pea or soy protein just convert existing protein from one form into another, like from a pea into a veggie burger. That also explains why some of them have unusual textures. Meanwhile, animals only concentrate protein. Like us, they're just taking amino acids from their food to build their own proteins, so those nutrients get passed from the feed to the animal to us. And in fact, the more things travel up the food chain, the less efficient it is to produce those foods. But this microbe is introducing new protein into our world, converting simple ingredients into the protein we need with no middleman. It means less wasted space and energy. It's also super efficient to grow, almost 130 times more efficient than beef in terms of protein per acre, and it's more efficient than many vegetarian proteins too, including peas and soy.
If we remember Tony Seba's video, the biggest disruption is not cell-based meat, but it's actually precision fermentation technology.
I hear so many times that it takes a long time to get plant-based products to taste like the real thing. So how long did it take for this to happen, and what kind of processes did they go through? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you're right. And one of the challenges in plant-based proteins, just to, explain a little bit, it's a little bit different from what we do. In plant-based proteins, what they're doing is extracting the protein in an isolate form from either a pea or a soybean. And then they have to kind of go through a process to retexturize it and sometimes cover up, certain flavors like pea, which are not pleasant necessarily when you're tasting it in certain contexts. In our case, what we have food scientists who've been working on it for a few years, but what we have is a very neutral base that we're starting with. So phi is very neutral tasting, neutral in color, neutral in taste, and that took a lot of work to get to that point. But then our food scientists can use it very easily, and because it has that natural texture already for meatless products, it's really easy for us to deliver that texture and then add the flavors to create, which is what the magic of food science is, to create and mimic using vegan flavors, some of those meat-like flavors. On the dairy side, what's interesting about phi is we take that same protein that I mentioned was, had the texture, but we literally put it in a blender with water and create what we call phi milk. And from that, we can actually create, dairy-like products. And because it has both the protein, fat, and fiber, it has this sort of very, what I'd say creamy consistency naturally. So we're able to take advantage of that in the dairy-like product. So it's been a few years, but those are just the tip of the iceberg. We have many, many more products that we've developed on both the meatless and the dairy-free side that we'll be launching, in the coming years. But our food scientists, I would say, probably the first one joined the company, maybe a year or so before I did. So not that long, actually, if you think about it.
Now, it's still early days for the technology, as we'll see, especially for meat in my taste test, but we're starting this journey to actually creating really good foods. Once we get things like the texture and the taste right, it's going to be a lot cheaper to produce than animal protein, but also cell-based meat. In my taste test, I'm looking to compare Nature's Fynd with the Beyond Breakfast sausage, mostly because I want to see how close we are just to parity. So the ingredients for the Beyond sausage patty were primarily pea protein. Then we have the coconut oil, some natural flavors, yeast, rice protein, methicellulose, pumpkin extract, vinegar, lemon juice, yeast extract, sunflower lectin, beet juice extract, and carrot. And then for Nature's Fynd, it is a completely new protein. So they've highlighted that on their package here. And we can see that this is a complete protein containing 9 amino acids and fiber, grown without any antibiotics. It is a fungi protein, but that doesn't mean it's a mushroom. Right, so not all mushrooms are fungi, but not all fungi are mushrooms. So for their ingredients, we have their fungi protein, water, sunflower oil, soy protein, and then other natural flavors. Yeast extract, onion powder, lactic acid, modified food starch, rice protein, salt, carrageenan, methylcellulose, black pepper, vinegar, fruit juice, and spices. And we can see these are what they look like. So I want to compare these because I already think that we are at parity in terms of taste with sausage patties in this case. So I want to compare them to see where we are in terms of the plant-based versus the precision fermentation, especially when it comes to replacing protein.
This one is a little better.
Yeah.
I think the texture is not quite so chewy.
This one here?
This one.
Mm-hmm.
This one. But I'm not sure if what's better about it is that this one seems like it has more salt than this one. Protein, sugars, sodium. Okay, here we go. Holy smokes! This one has that much salt.
That's amazing. That one, the Beyond one, tastes way saltier. Yeah. And it tastes more, the texture tastes more meaty, I would say.
This one. Like, they're both good. I think they're both good. But I thought this one would have way more sodium.
Yeah, me too.
This one is 20%.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's huge.
Unfortunately, I lost my close-up footage, but basically, I tried this with my dad. Both of us liked the Beyond sausage patty better, surprisingly, mostly because it tasted a bit saltier and it tasted a bit more meaty, both in terms of the flavor and the texture. Both of them were good, and to me, both of them were the same as a sausage patty, I think, which is quite heavily processed anyways. I think the reason the Phi right now is so salty is because it's quite a neutral base that it starts out with. So they just need to add that much more salt to give it any flavor because it just kind of soaks everything up. More or less the same, I would say, as the Beyond Meat sausage patty, and it's already cheaper. We'll see you in the next video.